I hope this video has taught you the glucose-insulin relationship between a non-diabetic, a type 1 diabetic, and type 2 diabetic.
Lastly, we'll demonstrate type 2 diabetes. Just like the other two scenarios, someone will eat food, it will get digested into smaller molecules or glucose, and then it will work its way into the bloodstream. A person with type 2 diabetes pancreas does produce insulin. However, the difference between a non-diabetic and a person with type 2 diabetes is the insulin receptors don't work properly, and they can't bind to the insulin. Since the insulin and insulin receptors don't bind together, the glucose channels don't open, and the glucose cannot penetrate the cell membrane. Ways to treat type 2 diabetes are exercise, medications such as blood thinners, or anti-diabetic medication.
Ways to treat type 1 diabetes is by injecting insulin into the bloodstream. Now we will use the same model to demonstrate type 1 diabetes. First, when someone eats food, it works its way down into the stomach and is broken down into smaller pieces or glucose. The glucose travels its way through the small intestine and eventually into the bloodstream. However, someone with type 1 diabetes does not produce insulin in the pancreas. Therefore, the bloodstream is filled with glucose. When glucose tries to enter the cell, the insulin receptor cannot bind with anything, since there's no insulin in the bloodstream. Therefore, the glucose channels do not open and the glucose cannot get into the cell.
First, you're going to talk about how a non-diabetic person's glucose and insulin react with each other. First, someone eats food, and it works its way down into the stomach. There it is broken down into smaller pieces or glucose. The glucose travels into the small intestine, and there it works its way into the bloodstream. As soon as the glucose enters the bloodstream, the pancreas is notified, and then it releases insulin. How the glucose gets from the blood and into the cell, the membrane of the cells have insulin receptors. The insulin receptors bind with the insulin, and that creates a reaction that opens the glucose channels. As soon as the glucose channels open, transport proteins are waiting to receive the glucose. There, the transport protein takes the glucose to where it's needed.
Hello, this is Alexa and Lauren, and we are going to teach you how glucose and insulin react with each other to feed your cells.